Hello. So I wanted to do a quick update on the current status of gold, okay? And basically what came out of the CPI data report that was released yesterday. In case you guys aren't aware of the numbers, let's take a quick look at them. So from a core CPI standpoint, and sorry I'm talking quietly, it's because I'm still not at home. I'll be home next week. Um, but yeah, so looking at the core CPI numbers here month to month, we did see a slight decline at 0.3%, but actually when you look at the forecast, when you're talking about 0.1% difference from the forecast, it's basically as expected, right? And the same could be said about the CPI overall year on year. We're still looking at 5.4%, so just 0.1% above what was expected in the forecast. And overall, still very, 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 very high, right? And this just kind of brings up what I kind of was saying before in the last video I did about gold, where if anything, although the CPI numbers this time weren't like shocking, like for example, us going at 0.9% core CPI month to month, compared to like a 0.5% forecast or whatever. And although we didn't have that kind of like complete shock in the CPI report, it's still clear though that the inflation problem is a massive, massive, massive issue. It's still a massive issue that the Fed does not want to touch. Okay, 5.4%. Okay, I don't care what kind of economist you are. That's that's absurdly high. Okay, and the reality is that when we start looking at the gold charts, we're looking at the day chart right now, and I'm pretty much just going to focus on the day chart for today, maybe like the 4-hour chart. But the reality is that yes, okay, we got that shock, when we had that huge kind of dump, almost like that manipulation, right, where the price really fell from that 1750 kind of resistance point all the way down to almost the double bottom that we saw before back here. Okay, yes, we did have that. You're going to get manipulation in the market, whatever, whatever, whatever. But I said in the last video that I personally um, was starting to get very interested in placing buys around 1750 and certainly at lower prices than this because the inflation problem is still there. Okay, the inflation problem is still there. And in fact, in my personal opinion, although you could say that this regression in the core CPI number month to month, would suggest that actually the inflation is retracing. It's not as, it's not something that we need to worry about. It is what the Fed is saying, transitory, blah, 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 blah. And that therefore, like, because everything is now moving in accordance to what the Fed is saying, that the Fed is also going to start talking about tapering assets way faster. You've seen a couple of quotes from certain Fed representatives or Fed members or FOMC members over the past few days as well, saying, we should talk about tapering asset purchases sooner rather than later in next month or maybe the month after in October, whatever. I actually personally think, and maybe this is just me being the hardcore government fuck you skeptic, right? But I'm just in the opinion that the fact that the inflation isn't shocking is actually more beneficial to the Fed to just continue doing what they're doing. The Fed cannot just stop doing what they're doing. They know this, right? They know this. They know the kind of adverse effect that it's going to have on the market when they choose to do that, okay? And I personally just think that they're going to keep on pushing that back as far as possible, just given where the world also is, also just the ridiculous amount of risks that people are taking right now as a consequence of the economic situation too, stocks being at all-time highs, crypto booming, blah, 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 all those different types of things. I just think that the Fed, like they've basically they've done something that they can't just go back on so quickly like they claim, okay? So the fact that this inflation isn't nearly as shocking this time around actually, I think, just adds impetus to the idea that the Fed can continue to say, hey, look, inflation's easing. Everything we're doing is going fine. We don't need to do everything. We don't need to rush into anything. We still need to wait for the economy to improve, blah, 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 blah. But let's be real. We do know that still, despite the fact that the report wasn't shocking, right? It was still ridiculously high. And I mean, the inflation numbers overall, sorry, I clicked some stupid fucking um, link. But we know that the inflation numbers are still absurdly high at 5.4% CPI year on year. That's just ridiculous, right? We know that. So I actually think, again, that this report is actually still positive for gold. And I still think that this inflation narrative is just going to continue to lead to more bullish sentiment for gold currently. I just really cannot see Powell doing such a strong 180, okay? Such a strong 180. And just putting the economy at kind of like risk by doing something like that. I just can't see that happening right now. Um, so again, I do think that this is positive for gold. And I think, yes, although the recovery is a bit slower than perhaps you would like if you're a gold bull. Right now I'm looking at the hour chart. Let's go 4-hour chart. I think I mean, obviously, once we had that price manipulation, we got that quick bounce back from that manipulation. And now we've just steadily kind of trended upwards. And then ever since yesterday, right, when the news kind of came out on the 11th, it was around here, I believe, or whatever. All right, we've been trending upwards. And I still feel that at these kind of price ranges, um, it's a good price to potentially get into gold for a slightly longer term swing trade or a longer term hold or very long term hold if you're just interested in gold overall. I think when ultimately sooner or later Powell is going to have to speak again. I don't exactly know when his next speech is going to be, but of course he's going to address the CPI numbers again. And I assume that he's just going to continue to signal that, look, inflation isn't as crazy as everybody was freaking out about. Don't worry, we can continue. That's the kind of narrative I feel like he's going to push. And when that comes out, I think that gold is going to continue pushing upwards. Definitely pushing back upwards to 1800 in my opinion. Even if that means we retrace a bit back again, like just through standard price action, go back to 1740 or whatever it may be, before going back up and continuing, something like that. I still think overall in the longer term, gold is looking more bullish right now just because of the inflation narrative. And that's it. I don't think jobs data is going to outweigh inflation narratives right now. I just don't think that it's going to happen. Okay. We saw that as well in the dollar. The dollar is still at pretty high levels, right? When we look at the day chart. In theory, if that was going to be good for the dollar, we would have easily gone back to test, right? Pretty strongly the 93.5 level, but we didn't, and now we're just going back. So I'm just not I'm not convinced that, like how some people say that, how some analysts are saying that, oh, actually this is just showing that what the Fed has been saying has been accurate, and therefore they're going to start implementing tapering asset purchases sooner. I just don't believe that. I think that they're viewing it the wrong way. So this is just my take on everything. I'm pretty bullish on gold still right now. Maybe I could be wrong, but that's just kind of my overall feel on it. Let me know what you guys think. Leave a comment, give me a thumbs up, and thanks for listening.